Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a story that's sending shockwaves through Eastern Europe. Belarus turning against Moscow. For decades, Belarus has been one of Russia's closest allies, a loyal partner politically, economically, and militarily. But now deep cracks are beginning to appear in that alliance. What was once considered an unshakable relationship between Vladimir Putin and Alexander Lukashenko is showing real signs of strain, and the fallout could reshape the balance of power across the region. To understand how we got here, we have to go back to the foundation of this alliance. Belarus and Russia have shared close ties since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Both countries maintained deep economic links, common language and culture, and a strategic partnership that positioned Belarus as Russia's western buffer against NATO. Moscow provided cheap oil and gas, financial aid, and political backing, while Minsk offered loyalty and cooperation in return. For years, Lukashenko managed to balance his nation between East and West, using this relationship to secure resources from Moscow, while occasionally flirting with Europe to maintain some autonomy. But that delicate balancing act has started to fall apart. After the 2020 Belarusian elections, when mass protests erupted against Lukashenko's rule, Putin stepped in to save him. Russia's political and security support allowed Lukashenko to survive when the West turned its back. But that assistance came at a price: increased dependence. Moscow saw an opportunity to pull Belarus closer than ever, expanding its military presence, integrating defense systems, and using Belarusian territory as a platform for its regional strategy. The final step came in 2022, when Belarus became a key staging ground for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That moment cemented Belarus as a de facto extension of Russian influence. However, that partnership has started to sour. Lukashenko is now realizing that his country's sovereignty is slipping away under Moscow's shadow. Russian troops remain stationed in Belarus, and the Kremlin has been pushing hard for deeper political and military integration through the Union State, a structure that would essentially merge the two countries under a joint administration. But Lukashenko, despite his dependency, has no interest in becoming Putin's puppet. His survival depends on maintaining the illusion of independence, and he knows that surrendering control would mean the end of his political power. In recent months, Lukashenko's rhetoric has subtly shifted. He's criticized Moscow's actions, refused to openly support some of Russia's military moves, and has quietly reached out to other partners. Belarusian officials have held talks with China, Turkey, and even Ukraine through back channels. The message is clear: Minsk wants options, and those options involve distancing itself, at least partially, from Russia's grip. Behind the scenes, Belarusian elites are growing nervous. The war in Ukraine has dragged on far longer than expected. Russian casualties continue to rise, and Western sanctions are biting hard. Many in Belarus fear that Moscow's isolation will eventually drag them down too. This growing unease became especially visible when reports emerged that Lukashenko was resisting further Russian deployments on Belarusian soil. The Kremlin expected full cooperation, but Minsk started pushing back, citing concerns about national stability. Lukashenko even made remarks suggesting that Belarus would only enter a conflict if directly attacked, a subtle but significant message distancing his government from Russia's war narrative. For Putin, this is more than a personal insult. It's a strategic setback. Losing Belarus as a loyal satellite would mean losing control over one of the most crucial geopolitical buffers in Europe. The alliance's deterioration is not just about political tension, it's also about economics. Russia's own economy is under severe strain from sanctions, reducing its ability to support Belarus financially. Cheap energy deals, once a cornerstone of their friendship, are no longer as generous. Belarus's economy, which heavily relies on Russian markets and transit routes, is suffering as well. Inflation is rising, foreign investment is shrinking, and trade with the West remains largely frozen. Lukashenko, ever the survivor, understands that long-term dependence on a sinking partner could drag Belarus into deeper crisis. There's also the factor of national identity. For decades, Belarusian identity was overshadowed by its close ties with Russia. But since 2022, that has started to change. The The war in Ukraine has triggered a wave of nationalism and self-reflection among Belarusians. Many now see what's happening next door as a warning, a smaller country losing its independence to Moscow's ambitions. Civil groups, exiled opposition leaders, and even some within the establishment are beginning to talk more openly about protecting Belarusian sovereignty. That sentiment, once marginal, is growing stronger each month. On the global stage, this rift is being watched closely. NATO sees the cracks as an opportunity. Western intelligence suggests that Belarus's leadership is quietly limiting Russian influence where it can, particularly within its intelligence services and security structures. Meanwhile, China has been playing a careful game, supporting Lukashenko economically, but without directly aligning against the West. This new dynamic gives Belarus leverage. It's trying to position itself as a mediator, or at least as a neutral actor, to reduce dependence on Moscow. But that's a dangerous game to play with Putin, who views loyalty as non-negotiable. Inside the Kremlin, frustration is reportedly growing. Russian officials see Lukashenko's new behavior as ungrateful and unpredictable. After all, they kept him in power when the West sought to remove him. But loyalty bought through coercion rarely lasts. Lukashenko has survived for nearly 3 decades by shifting allegiances and manipulating stronger powers against each other. Now he's trying to do the same with Russia, balancing on the edge between rebellion and obedience. The potential fallout of this split is huge. If Belarus truly distances itself, Russia loses more than a partner. It loses a critical launch point for influence in Eastern Europe. It would weaken Russia's position on NATO's eastern border and disrupt its military logistics. It would also inspire other regional players, like Kazakhstan or Armenia, to reconsider their alignment with Moscow. The ripple effect could accelerate the unraveling of what's left of Russia's sphere of influence. However, Lukashenko must move carefully. Russia still has immense leverage over Belarus through energy, trade, and security ties. Any sudden break could trigger economic retaliation or political destabilization. The Kremlin has a long history of punishing disloyal allies, whether through sanctions, information campaigns, or covert pressure. For now, Belarus's approach is one of slow disengagement, creating distance without open confrontation. But even that quiet rebellion is enough to worry Moscow. So what does this mean for the future of the alliance? Most likely we'll see a gradual but undeniable decline. Belarus will continue playing both sides, keeping Russia close enough for protection but distant enough to preserve independence. Yet over time, these contradictions will become impossible to sustain. The more Russia weakens under economic isolation and military strain, the more its allies will drift away in search of stability and security. Lukashenko's survival instinct will push him toward whatever direction keeps him in power, and right now, that means rethinking his country's loyalty to Moscow. In the end, what we're witnessing is more than a political disagreement. It's a historic shift, a sign that even Russia's oldest alliances are not immune to the forces of change. The cracks in the Moscow-Minsk axis are widening, and the once solid foundation of the post-Soviet order is beginning to crumble. Belarus may not break completely from Russia today, but the writing is on the wall. The alliance that defined Eastern European geopolitics for decades is falling apart, piece by piece, and the consequences will echo far beyond their borders.